Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Breaking everything. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. We got Scott joining us right away. Brian's going to be joining us here a second. We got Sean with us as always, and I am excited for this topic. Now, while I'm excited, y'all should be too. Do the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever this goes live, which is, of course, Fridays for the Collective, Wednesdays for the Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. And if you haven't already, make sure you are signed up for the reinforcement loop so that you can stay in the loop and get those newsletters every week. So let's jump into the intros right away, and then we can get right into the conversation. Scott, 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All the good stuff. You know the drill.
Hey, Scott. I'm from BC, currently living here, and I'm the founder of the Rolling Barrage. Been in veterans advocacy for about 27 years now. There we have it.
Bam. I like it. Short and sweet. Sean, how's the prairies treating you?
The mountains are still there, and the grass is right in front of my nose.
I like this. Now, we're going to be talking about the shoulders of giants. And originally, I got stuck on the advocacy side. I got stuck on the military side, but then my brain kind of opened up into all kinds of realms that we could take this. So let's get started with it. Scott, when you first got the email, when you got the topic, what were your first thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole concept of shoulders of giants is it's overwhelming, really, because of the opportunities that are there for so many people to be those giants, and just lifting the weight of the world and the weight of advocacy, mental health, all kinds of different aspects. It's so far ranging, and can be intimidating to some, I'm sure. So that's my thoughts initially.
Absolutely. Sean, what are you thinking?
I feel the same way, and to speak on the subject of intimidating, I regularly feel it like every single day that the shoulders that I've somehow managed to climb onto makes me feel like I actually don't belong there. And so this idea that we all stand on the shoulder of giants is in stark contrast, at least for me and other people that I know, a sense of I don't belong on the shoulders of giants. And so I believe it comes down to what was the cost for the individual that I'm standing on their shoulders, and what is my responsibility to accept that that's what they had to sacrifice, and therefore I need to meet that same kind of sacrifice.
And this is a beautiful thing. I was thinking originally as well about being the giant that people stand on, right? Like how to build yourself to a point that people will use your works moving forward. So not only the, placement of ourselves there, but then people looking at us as the giants going, oh my God, you guys were trail drivers. You know what I mean? Like how, especially for you, Sean, I want to talk to you specifically about this right away. Okay. Like you were on the teams first at the very beginning of it. What is it like now looking at JTF2 overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, it's something that Seb and I, by the way, speaking of sitting on the shoulder of giants, I'm sitting in the seat of a giant right now. I'm in Seb Lavoie's office. This is his backdrop. This is his mic. This is his camera. This is me, to some degree, standing on the shoulder of a giant that I have aligned with. And it isn't about his stature. It's about what he represents, not only to the people that I know, but what he represents to me. And therefore, I think that's an important consideration that all of us should ask ourselves. What is a giant? Is it simply a direct lineage of, well, I was a plank holder on the teams and I was on the shoulder of giants that were the generation before me in the Canadian Airborne Regiment? Or am I on the shoulder of giants that are loosely associated with the team? or am I, as I believe right now, the shoulders of giants that, as a plank holder, I was standing on were much more than just JTF2. And so the giant structure is often thought of as just one person. You're getting onto that one person's giant opportunities, or that giant performance, or that giant obligation, or that giant sacrifice. And it's probably not just one individual. It is giants, plural. And so the giants don't have to be just in your industry. It doesn't have to be just special operations. Seb was, in a sense, special operations within the RCMP world. And therefore, he is a giant in my mind. And so it comes down to, what is a giant in your mind? And as I said to Seb yesterday, as we were driving out to Lethbridge, this subject came up, and not specifically shoulder of giants, but the idea that though I was a plank holder on the teams, I wasn't there a really long time to see a massive evolution that has occurred in the teams. So today, as I consider my position on the team as a plank holder, I kind of feel like it pales in comparison to what the team has accomplished to date, and contextualizing myself against the modern special operator. Somehow I feel like I barely live up to the standard that I was actually trying to set at the time in context of what they are capable now. So I find it an interesting, complex, and perhaps not often discussed, deeper subject of what is our definition of giants. I don't feel like I was one, that's for sure. But I look at pretty much everyone that was involved at that time as giants. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Scott, what do you got?
I think one of the interesting things there is how Sean relays that he was, implicit in the beginning of how the team's all built up, and yet he holds an air of being humble, in that he doesn't really realize how he contributed to the growth and where it's at today. Because without that foundation, I mean, he is literally one of the giants that the other teams are now building off of. So I think that's a really interesting aspect that we should also look at, is how we can be humble about, and for the most part, I would say all of us are that are in these positions where we've started, in immense things, and watched it blossom from there. So really, really interesting point there, Sean, that I don't even know if you picked up on.
Perhaps he might have picked up on it. I want to ask you though, Scott, specifically, you were one of the first advocates that I ever heard of when I first got in the military, and then once I was out, you were like the person to talk to. It was you and Mark Campbell and a couple others, and so I wanted to ask you specifically about the kind of the onset of maybe perhaps advocacy in the late 90s, early 2000s, like what that was like first off, but also who you built off of. What do you think? I think he might be frozen.
It's kind of looking that way.
Yeah, I think he's frozen. Dang, that was a really good question, but
I don't mind. I don't mind jumping in on something just to change it just a touch, but it's in line with what Scott said, that perhaps I'm exhibiting some humility in the moment in respect to my roles and responsibilities in the formation of the team, which again I don't really think is such a big deal per se, but. I think what is interesting, and I'm interested in your opinion, Chance, because I think this is a universally applicable lesson, or a universally applicable thought process. And it is whatever humility I've got in respect to being a plank holder, there's probably a time when I didn't exhibit much humility. I think perhaps in order to find your sweet spot, your balance point on these kind of subjects, you've kind of got to be a goof to do it better. You've kind of got to be arrogant in order to understand humility. And I'm not saying anyone should actively pursue being arrogant. What I am saying is perhaps I was at some point, But I'll only learn that by looking backwards and reflecting or introspecting on how I've been running my program over the last couple of 3 decades, and my relationship to the team and who I am now. And so I don't think that anyone just kind of looks at this idea and thinks, well, I guess I was kind of a giant and now I'm going to be Mr. Humility. I just don't know if that's the case. And so I think there has to be some kind of, like, you do it kind of wrong to kind of get it right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes total sense. And one of the interesting things you said there that I wanted to just touch on is you have to experience the consequences of arrogance, I think, and then actually like look at it from a hindsight point of view. And I love that. Now, Brian jumped in. We got Brian here. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man.
I am so sorry for being late.
Don't even.
Yeah, it's all good. We got connection issues all over the place right now, actually. So it's been kind of hilarious, but all good. Why don't we get you right into the conversation then? And what we're talking about right now is standing on the shoulders of giants, but defining, what giants even mean to us to begin with. So we're going to throw you right into the deep end. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was just having a conversation with my mom about my grandfather who's going through a degenerative brain issue, and that man was a giant. He's a giant in the world of law enforcement. He was in the Coast Guard. Just served his entire life. Even when he retired, he's working cold cases. He was flying. He had a Cessna 172. He'd fly all over the place doing search and rescue, and now it's tough. He's in Arizona, and he constantly believes that people are after him. He wants to set up command posts in his backyard. And so I just think of, here's a guy who has a life of service, who has a life of excellence, who is, somebody that I always looked up to. He's a guy who's dedicated to service, the master's degree, always working to make his city a better place. And here he is with, living out some of the worst memories of his life in his head, and he can't get out of it. But that man is a giant. And I've stood on his shoulders my entire life, and so for me, that's what it's all about. You live an entire life of dedication to other people. That and that's something that I've aspired to my whole life, and I hope that that's something that I put into my kids' head too, where you get purpose, you get meaning from making your community a better place.
I'm digging this. We actually got a question on the Instagram side here that falls directly in line with what you're talking about. Dave Curvin jumped in here. He said, do you ever wonder if your children feel as though they are standing on the shoulders of giants? And this is a really interesting, because to put ourselves in, like, to think back when I was a child and I look at my parents and the people I stood on and the culture that I come from, it also plays into this question. So I'm going to go around with this. What do you think, Sean? I'm going to come to you first.
Well, I'm kind of laughing because my own 2 sons throughout various points in their lives have looked at me and said, yeah, but you're Sean Taylor, which is hilarious to me because I just think of myself as a dude who's trying hard. But in my son's eyes, like, I have a pedigree or a resume, I suppose, that is to some degree reasonably impressive, but it's not my resume that impresses my sons. It's my daily actions. It's my discipline. It's my focus. It's my execution. It's my want for more, seeking relentless betterment, but not just for myself, but for others. The literal forming of this podcast was to do these things that I'm talking about right now, to demonstrate that none of us are that particularly special, but combined with a focus and a mission and a drive, we can create betterment for all those around us. And so, my sons see me do it on a daily basis. And they started saying that, like, trite statement to me, like, yeah, well, it's easy for you because you're Sean. Well, it was never easy. my life hasn't been that easy, but I've stayed committed to a path that I believe in. And I suppose that is what my sons see. And that's how they find it easy to categorize as, well, yeah, of course, because you're Sean Taylor, but I'm the everyman. Like when I was a kid growing up, I was skinny, underperforming, thought I was dumb, almost failed high school. High school kind of sucked for me. Early life kind of sucked for me. I joined the military, didn't really know what I was going to be, but through a process, by the way, a fiery process of adversity and discipline and understanding resilience, and then gaining some sense of how to lead myself and then lead others, and all of the various things that the military can provide. I'm a result of a process that I entered into barely understanding. But while I was in the process, I really focused on trying to get better at the process. And so it's that curiosity on how to do things better in life that has created me, not my perhaps humongous biceps, of which they aren't humongous. It has been my will, my personal drive, my reluctance to accept no, and my desire to find yes. Yes to finding a way to make things happen. There is always a way to get something done. And I have been less prone to surrendering and more prone to being on the offensive on all things in my life. It doesn't mean that I'm disagreeable with people. It means I'm disagreeable with myself to settling for less. And so I suppose I was formed by giants in the military. Unbeknownst to me, somewhere along the way, I started to believe that if they can do it, I can do it. But why should I do it? And in my young mind, in my equation of trying to puzzle out these details, I simply came up with the result, the math result of, well, I can do it, and here's why I'm going to. It's payback, baby. I got to pay back these guys that I'm standing on their shoulders who don't know what they created, because I don't know what I am yet. But I'm going to pursue it like a freak until I can pay them back. Well, somewhere along the way, I kind of started paying things back a little bit. And now in my 60s, I can look back at that young man that I was, and I can kind of be proud of the decisions that I made. Maybe the outcomes aren't what make me proud. It's proud that I saw a way to pay back in my own way, so that now I feel like I did it right. I did them right. And so that's my thoughts on that subject.
Interesting. Brian, what do you got?
Yeah. So last year I took my son, who was 16 at the time, to South Sudan with me, and we went in. So we land, and it's 115 degrees outside, and I was with a couple other adults, and he took it with a just with a stride, and the whole time he was upbeat, he was motivated, he was engaged in conversation, and standing around with people with you know some of the people were complaining, and they weren't setting things up in a timely manner, and we set our tents up on this hill out looking this just beautiful African plain, and he's like, "Hey Dad, can we go walk the perimeter?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." And so we're talking about plans, and uh, we end up leaving South Sudan and going back to Kenya. And we were meeting with one of the deans of the University of Nairobi. And as we were going around the table, all the adults were, we give our little resume, and we get to my boy, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a student at Long Beach Poly High School." And we walked out of that thing. He's like, "God, how do I follow your guys' resumes? How I just had all I had was that I'm a student." I'm like, well, no, you're walking circles around these other adults. You're engaging at this level, and so I felt a sense of, what, I'm doing it right now because my son can handle this environment. He can handle the environment when we're out in a very remote village. He can handle the environment when we're with very serious academic setting, and I thought, okay, he's this is the next generation. It makes me proud. It makes me happy, and I hope that I can keep him on that track. So, and the young one, I'll do the same with him, because I think creating those transformative experiences, giving them those opportunities to where they can see how different people lead, how different people interact with the environment, different cultures, and seeing how basically how to get to the point where all of us are confident and comfortable at getting a boy up to that level. And so I was proud of the kid, and I'm still, still proud of him. He's 17 now, doing some great things at his high school. He started a agriculture for South Sudan club, where he's raising money for these guys. Of course, you leave a kid in charge of a club, and he makes sure the acronym spells ass. But it's he's a funny kid too. So
Perfect. I love that. I was. Have you guys ever seen the firefighter competitions? And I got this cat in front of me. Holy cow! Where they got to climb up a ladder, and then they hand bomb water pails up to the next dude up the ladder. And while you guys were talking, I had this image of kind of sculpting something out of clay, and then that thing making something else and placing it on its shoulder and continually handing something to the next generation. And it's such a great image in my head, but I got to see it when I go to the branding every year. Like, I go down to the ranch and I hang out with all the old cowboys, and I get to work in the pen with all the old dogs, and I'm bringing my kids with me, and they get that experience. And I've been doing the branding since I was my kid's age, right? I was when I started, and just being around, as you say, being around the people, seeing what other people do, watching how they react to different situations. As a small story, my son was in the pen with me, my oldest, and all the other kids disappeared. Wait, when the hard work starts, right? The other little kids disappear, and he is 11. He was 11 at the time when we did the last one, and we all got out there. We were working. All the kids disappeared. He was like, "Hey, man, can I go play with the kids?" And I'm like, "No. Pretty sure you said you were going to stay and work with us the whole time. Is that true?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." I was like, "Okay, that's it." And he goes, "Okay," and he went right back to work. And then at the end of it, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I was the only kid that stayed here." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. You were the only kid that stayed here. You want an extra donut?" And he was like, "Yeah, I do." I was like, "All right, sweet, let's go get an extra donut." But getting to see it firsthand and watching not only our kids get those experiences, it's a beautiful thing. And I want to play with the idea of kind of giving of ourselves constantly is what grows that next generation. Sean, what do you think?
I think that I'm super stoked that Brian brought up this subject of his son, because he's right. That is probably our biggest responsibility, is raising up the next generation of giants. Because for giants to exist, perhaps in a military situation, in a military environment, where it's kind of like the almost stereotypical example of, well, who are giants in the world? Whose shoulders are we standing on? And it goes back to that, the generation of World War II, where we consider them as the greatest generation, perhaps because of their sacrifices, their grittiness, and all of the good things. And so, we kind of categorize generations as a label. And usually it's military specific. In fact, I think, Chance, if you look at the poster, when I looked at it, I immediately defaulted to Shoulder of Giants. Of course, the military is almost the preeminent example. But a greater responsibility is to create good kids that then go into a system to become giants, or at least understand what they're standing on and how to learn from it. And so you can raise a child and then put them into a system as an adult where they never understand what a giant is, where they never understand what shoulders are, and how they never understand why they should seek to stand on them. And it's not for the glory. It's not because the oxygen is better up there. It's because it's your responsibility to pay it forward. As you learn as a young man to become a better adult, you're also learning how to look after the next generation. As I've said to my sons, I'm not trying to raise you. I'm trying to raise your kids. I'm trying to teach you the lessons that you will need to teach your children. Don't pay attention to how I'm raising you. Pay attention to how I'm raising your kids that you'll have in the future. The lessons that I'm imparting are not for you. They're for them. Your job is to raise the next generation of giants, not just to, again, seek fame or glory or notoriety. And it's certainly not to get big biceps, because I've already established they're not that big. It is to pay it forward for what we've been given from the past. And I think sometimes it's considered as, well, you can start moving amongst giants when you're a man, when you're really old, when you're shaving. But that isn't the case. Giants are created the moment that they come out of diapers. Whether you let them walk by themselves or you coddle them in blankets and carry them everywhere, these are, no pun intended, literally the first steps that you are deciding as to how to create a giant. A giant is not weak. A giant is not small. A giant has to stand up to immense responsibilities and burdens and handle them with grace. And that can't happen on day one in recruit school. You can't understand these things in week 7 of a recruit school. And by the way, by the end of recruit school, if you didn't understand giants beforehand, you probably don't have that good of a sense of what a giant actually is. You've observed giants as you're doing all of your knuckle push-ups and chin-ups, as you're getting the beat down in infantry recruit school, perhaps. But all you're doing is observing it and experiencing it. But you don't have the inner world or the inner knowledge or the young wisdom to categorize it for what it is. Not just to see it, but have the early wisdom to recognize it for what it is, and then more correctly try to emulate the giantism of that individual, rather than just trying to understand why they've got such shiny boots. How do I get shiny boots isn't the lesson. The lesson is, why are his boots shiny? And how does he make me feel that I want to have shiny boots as much as he has shiny boots? These deeper considerations need to be taught as a process or a systematic response to life at an early age, much like Brian's son, thoughtfully saying, hey, let's walk the perimeter. That's a protocol. That's a process that he didn't just invent that minute. It was something that was driven into him in his life, or he picked up in a way through his early wisdom to understand how important it is to have these structures in place that keep you honest, keep you grounded, keep you in a sense of, I am in control of this moment. And if I am in control of this moment, now I can apply some of my bandwidth to some of the more abstract notions that are going on around me, like, what is this guy all about? Why is he so appealing? Why do I want to understand how to become that kind of a giant? You can't identify giants if you can't spell giant. And as a young age, you're supposed to learn it as Giant, and why it's spelled that way, not just as a word, but as a deeper sense of the word.
Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I've been watching your videos on Instagram with the knife lately. I thought that was pretty cool. So your biceps are impressive. So don't diminish those. So I'm working internal affairs right now for the LAPD, and you see those kids that come on into service that weren't raised in the environment of core values, that weren't raised in the environment that necessarily that train the skills that's necessary to be a giant. And sometimes they falter, and they make the department, they make my organization look bad. And it is such a huge responsibility as a parent to make sure that your kids have exposure to values, to make sure that they have exposure to what it is to be a giant and how to become a giant. And so, and I look, I don't always get it right. Sometimes today is my first day off in a month, and it's I try to make all their games, but I don't. It's tough, but I try to do my best to make sure that they have the understanding of the values, and that they have morals, and that they try to do everything with the highest ethical standards, and that they know what it is to be a good person. And so I think that Sean touches on all that, and so I see the opposite of that in my current role. I see when it goes wrong, and a lot of it comes down to you can break out of those systems of life that don't have core values, and you can do that by emulating giants within organizations. So Sean talks about the military formation, how you run into people and you see them, you're like, I want to be like that person. I want to lead like that when I'm in the position. And that's what you learn for. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your kids, but you always need to find those people that are giants, and learn from them, and make sure that when you see them coming up in the ranks, that you place them in the right positions so that they raise that next generation of giants. Otherwise, the effects of not doing that can be terrible, life threatening. So
I think we're seeing it. That's the thing. Like when you look at the broader scope of what's going on around the world, I think we're seeing the results of a long period of time where we have neglected teaching, though not just teaching, living the concept as to what Sean said, right? Giant is spelled Giant, and it's spelt that way for a reason. And I think we're seeing a lot of people out in the world, or especially on social media right now, that were never taught Giant. They were taught Gant, Gnait, whatever it is. But like, it's a skewed view of not just why, but how. And I saw it, at the end of my time in the military, we were seeing this a lot, where troops would be kind of pushed on. They didn't quite meet the standard, but the course isn't long enough, and we don't have enough time to do the paperwork. And it was just that little bit of laxness, that little bit of, we'll just pass it on to the next crew, and we'll just pass that on to the next crew. And eventually you'd get troops at the unit who were not up to standard. And then the unit had to teach them, even though they went through however many weeks of training. And it's a challenge, though, because it takes personal responsibility to put in the hard work when nobody else is doing it. And I think this is a key piece as to why we're kind of in the situation we're in right now, where we start to see those. Because I know there are good people out there, but it's hard to see sometimes on social media. What do you guys think? John?
Well, I think that to Brian's point in respect to core values, he's actually demonstrating them right now. What I heard was this: I've been working hard for the last month, and this is my first day off. What's he doing on his day off? He's on a podcast. And why is he on a podcast? Because it aligns with his core values. The messages that he gains in this podcast, but the messages that he puts out in this podcast, that is the exemplary of someone who is in the game, not just for themselves, but for others. And therefore, by doing this today, in this moment, it is so much easier for Brian to sit at the dinner table tonight and not raise the subject of the sacrifice he made on his day off, that he went on a podcast, gave up his casual time to come over here as a bit of work, as it were. He doesn't have to say that at the dinner table, because his son may ask, "What'd you do today on your day off, Dad?" And it could just be a simple inject of, "Well, I was on a really fun podcast with a couple of Canadians. We had a few laughs, but I learned a lot of things, and I want to believe that I added to the conversation, and we all shared some wisdom to be able to create some novel thought in the world, to creationally create better wisdom, at least for ourselves, but for anyone who learns. And simply that conversation at the dinner table, that is not only representing leadership by example as a core value, but it can also go in so many different ways at the dinner table, depending on how Brian wants to shape the conversation with a younger mind that is more accepting, to be open to ideas that may or may not work for them. And so if Brian does it right as a good parent, which I am sure he will do, he will shape the conversation so it's not so directed, it's a little more open-minded, and through a back and forth, generally easy unfolding conversation, the truth will expose itself as to what Brian is representing on the daily. I'm sure that, if his son would have started the pattern of, well, yeah, you're Brian Churchill, which is kind of like a running joke in our house right now. Well, yeah, you're Sean Taylor. I kind of laugh about it. It actually put me off my game my first time I heard it, because I was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not that, but I am Sean Taylor. So you're Brian Churchill. And I'm sure that you've raised your son in a way that he has held you up as a giant. He has put you up on a pedestal, though it may not be on top of Mount Everest. It's somewhere between there and ground level. Irrespective of how tall it is, your actions inform him as to who you are and inspire him not only to perhaps emulate those core values, but in the conversation tonight, you can introduce novel ways for him to consider how he can put his imprint on his greatness, his own unique footprint or fingerprint on his life's journey that Brian inevitably at some point won't be able to control. But what he can control right now is the belief and the faith and the honest core value sense that irrespective of where his son goes as a trajectory, he's on the right trajectory, his trajectory that's good for him, but is grounded in a giant called his dad who set him up for success.
I have a question for you guys on this, and I wrote down seeing the man in the giant, and I think this is a crucial piece of this because we can idolize people pretty quickly, right? And if we, especially our parents or leadership in the military, or somebody that you want to emulate, it's pretty easy to put them on a pedestal and see them as superhuman, superheroes, things like that, and it can be shocking later in life sometimes to realize that they're just humans. And so I'm wondering about yourselves, not only with your kids, but with the people that you've idolized in the past. How did you see the man in the giant? Brian, coming to you.
Yeah, thanks for those words, Sean. Those makes me feel pretty emotional. I'm actually going to be real quick on just the last comments. I'm taking my little guy fishing tonight. We're going to go out to the Coast Guard base and throw some lines in the water. So I think that'll be exactly what we talk about. So super emotional words, Sean. Super. So as far as seeing the man in the giant, I think as you get older, you realize that all people are just people, and some people, you see some people make mistakes, and you think, how could they do that? And maybe this wasn't for me. I have a friend who worked for General Petraeus, and when Petraeus had his whole scandal, he was completely shaken aback. And I remember talking to him. I'm like, hey, General Petraeus is a man, and he's a man just like the rest of us. So it's not really that bad. But he had put him on just the pedestal of perfection, and when that was taken, he was a little emotionally destroyed about it. But I think from from my experience, especially as a cop, I'm used to seeing people at their worst every single day for the past, for the past 23 years. So when I don't know that I think I see the person, I see the man in every giant, because I know that within them that they have the same struggles that I have, right? They might have insecurities. They might they might make bad decisions when they have other things in their life that are occupying their brain space, or if they're exhausted, if they're working on 2-3 hours of sleep and they have to make a decision and it's not a good decision. It's kind of stepping that back. What brought this giant to make a decision that wasn't giant-esque? And so I think at my age now, when I look at that stuff, it's more from a it comes from decades of law enforcement experience, where you just see people do heinous things, and if you generally live a good life and you generally make good decisions, those mistakes that you make in life, I think, are all forgivable. I would say that I spoke about my grandpa. I don't think I ever saw him make any egregious errors ever. So I think that that man was never, you know, he was always a giant to me. And so yeah, it's I don't think that happened for my from my perspective as a young man.
I'm digging this, man. This is a great conversation. Sean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, and I'd like to take it into a bit of a different tack, similar theme, but just to contextualize or create an extreme other end of the spectrum to Brian's version, which is, his grandpa was like the man in his mind. And so that wasn't the case for my dad. I never actually considered my dad as a giant. In fact, if I was being honest, it wouldn't be, he's not a shining example of a father, as it were. And so, I had to learn what a giant is in my first career, because I wasn't really surrounded by it. And I'm talking when, this was the late 70s when I was a teenager, and, I joined the military in 1983. And so, back then, there were no self-help books. There was no discussion on the internet, because it didn't exist, as to what a giant is, or what a man should be, or what a leadership position looks like, or if you're 18 years old, this is what you can look like when you're 48 years old. None of that existed. It was a blank slate or a learning model that you stepped into and either learned or didn't. And because I had really nothing in my toolbox at the time, as it were, I didn't understand a lot of how the world operated, what giants were, or how they got to be there. These are all things that I started kind of from scratch. I started with a cold eye review of what does it mean to ... And along the way, I learned, but it wasn't a easy process, because it just doesn't fall in your lap like an apple out of the apple tree. That's called gravity. And an apple, that isn't called understanding what a giant means and how to become it. It is, for me, an intentional pursuit of, this is what I've identified as what I want. Now I have to learn how to get it. And I was starting from nothing. And so throughout the 80s and into the 90s, I was lucky to be surrounded by enough influential men, and it was always men in my military career, given my trajectory, that I identified as, I want to be like that guy. Not I want to be him, but I want to be really like him. What he represents to me is ... And so siloing, or creating silos of various giants throughout my military career, I then somehow managed to synthesize these representative individuals on best practices, or subject matter experts, or avatars of excellence, as it were. I simply took all of these various silos throughout the various experiences that I bumped into them, and started synthesizing them into my own collated version of what it means to be a giant. Not me be a giant, but my prototypical example of I think that's what a giant is. Now, I had to form up something as an example of my exemplary pursuit. But years after I left the military, through a variety of different careers, I met a variety of different people who weren't military. They were computer system engineers, they were ultra endurance racers, they were coffee shop owners, whatever the case is. The variety of trajectories that I've been in have broadened and deepened my sense of what a giant is. And it ain't a requirement to have no pins in your hand grenade, because coffee shop owners don't own hand grenades. They don't understand what pins are. And so this almost laughable Marvel magazine or Marvel movies version of what a giant is not the Hulk or Thor. Though they are giant box office draws, they are, to be honest, the opposite of what giants are, because they're an artificial construct that was created with makeup and crustless sandwiches in the movie trailer, in between a palm frond waving. And I'm not into it. I mean, it's a good way to live, but it isn't a giant way to live. The only way to understand what a giant means is to freaking get in a hard game that teaches you hard lessons about who you are when the chips are down, not who you are when the crustless sandwiches show up. And so, any young man who's listening, any young lady who's listening, any older person who's listening, if you've never really considered this idea of a giant in your mind right now, should be challenged to be more complete, more complex, more three-dimensional in their not only life pursuits, but their thoughts and their ability to improvise and adapt and overcome when that new thing, whether it's a political thing or a transactional thing or a across the street thing, all of these new variables that get introduced into our lives should be setting us up through resilience to become a giant in a way that is not like Thor. I don't need a hammer to swing pretty hard and make an impact on the world. My hammer is my life, just wielding it the way I wield it. Now, how much impact it has on the world, that's not my concern. My concern is, like it says upstairs here, every moment, do your best every day. If you don't have a rule set to live by, pick that up and start living by it. And along the way, you'll figure out how to be your own version of Thor. You won't have the massive biceps, and you certainly won't have Mjolnir's hammer. But what you will have is a body of work that you can crush Thor with. Because while he's swinging his hammer and thinking about his crustless sandwiches, I'm looking him in the eye and thinking, bring it, pal, because I've seen you and way more than you as giants.
I'm super digging this. It brought to mind the concept of what media is, stories are, what these things are, right? Like if you have a superhero, why are people telling stories about a superhero? Well, because they're trying to personify something. And I mean, you think about any of the superheroes you want to go to Thor, great. The original concept of that was a personification, something that you would aspire to if you didn't have any sort of other influences. So it's an interesting concept to dive into kind of the pantheon of this, but I think it has to do with creating giants through storytelling. That's kind of what it is, but we've personified it so much that now, friggin' Robert Downey Jr. plays Iron Man, right? It's not Iron Man as some concept in your own mind to personify personally. It's Robert Downey Jr., right? That dude over there. So I think that has something to do with it as well. Brian, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's the I think being here in LA, you meet a lot of these celebrities, and there's very few of them that end up being good people. So it's yeah, you're right. Tying that personification of excellence onto an individual who has no morals, or you know, that does not do good for the world every single day, I think is tough. But having those, you think of people that are less than excellent in our own professions, in the military, folks that are just sitting there existing. And you guys said something earlier about that it's that daily pursuit of excellence, that daily pursuit of those core values, making a conscious effort every single day to follow what you have as part of your framework. And so that's everything that those superheroes are supposed to be. And everything personified in those values should be what a giant is, and it shouldn't be what these celebrities are as people. And quite frankly, I think they should do a better job being in the public eye. But
people are people. Unfortunately, we can't always dive into this. But Sean,
well, yeah, I do. So hang on a sec. People are people, but that is the problem. People aren't identifying people. They're identifying false characters, artificial constructs. They're identifying Iron Man as Robert Downey Jr., and therefore Robert Downey Jr. is the man. And next thing you know, you've got some kid somewhere who's on Amazon trying to buy the same blue tinted glasses that Robert Downey Jr. wears, because that's in vogue. That is the style. That if he gets his hair cut a certain way, I'm going to get my hair cut in a certain way. And somehow I'm in a lifestyle now of being a superhero. You can't go on Amazon and buy a plastic Thor hammer, put it next to you on the coffee table, and become Thor. It's a false construct. What you're actively doing is buying what you want to be instead of earning what you want to be. You want to be a hero? Go earn it. And that doesn't mean look for an opportunity constantly to save a life. It means live a quiet life of hard work that inspires others over a period of time based on your body of work of excellence through a consistent manner that is undoubtable, is unrefusable. You can't even refuse it yourself, even if you wanted to. You look back and you see the gong show of your life, and somehow it's turned into something that is perhaps not mind-blowing for anyone else, but it should blow your own mind at the very least. How on earth did a skinny, underperforming kid turn into this? Well, that was an intentional pursuit, as taught to me by giants. What they never taught me was you can buy your way to greatness. You can buy your way to the top. You can buy your way into giantism so that others can buy their way onto your shoulders. I never heard that growing up. What I've seen, though, is this penchant for, I want to be that thing now. Can I buy it now? The shortcut idea of, I want to be a giant by the end of the week. I want to be recognized by tomorrow. That's a fool's paradise. In fact, it's counterproductive, of course. That slippery slope of erosion of mindset. And so stay focused, stay intentional on what your vision is of what you want to become. And your vision should be greatness. I want to be more than mediocre. I don't know what I'll turn into, but my vision is I'm going to give it a go. I'm only here for a short time, and therefore, what can I do with it? I want to kick a bit of ass. I want to kick my own ass. I want to see if I kick my ass super hard, do I get super good results? And so mediocrity has never been my thing, but we all have to learn our own rotary dial of how much we're willing to expend in order to get what we have envisioned. And you can never buy that. You can only earn that and stay true to your vision along the way, even when you lose sight of your vision, even when you don't believe it's possible. You give up on yourself, or you just dig in a little bit more. I say dig in a little bit more, because it's been my experience. In fact, we just finished talking about it this morning as a chapter within the book that we are probably writing. And it is this, that there's a ton of times, to include on this podcast, by the way, as I said to Seb, that there's 2 times during the formation of the podcast in this last couple of years that we've been at it that I almost quit. Like I was so done with it. The workload was so hard. The what I wanted to occur was not occurring at a pace that I'm used to. And so I was like, man, I don't know if I can hang on to this. I don't know if I can just keep hammering on everything with my Thor's hammer. It doesn't seem to be producing the results that I want. Well, that's wants. My needs are this. My needs are that we kick ass as long as we have to kick ass to make the world a better place. I always, at some point in a new process that's redonkulously hard, I always get to a point where I am that close to throwing it in. Forget it. I can go do something else that's easier. But I never do. I never quit on these kind of things once I've locked in a vision. And as close as I get to quitting, there's 2 things that keep me in play when, by all accounts, I should have handed my cards in and moved along. And it's this. First, my why is really freaking strong. Like my mission directive, my mission vision is I see it. Now I just have to create it. That is the mission. But sometimes for me, the mission or the why is kind of not strong enough. And then that's when I have to default to one of my sometimes good, but sometimes bad character traits. And that is, I am insanely stubborn. I am stubborn with all caps stubborn. And so whether I was born that way, whether my military career created that in me, it doesn't matter. I've been stubborn I've stubborned my way through a lot of things that I shouldn't have probably been able to accomplish. And it is just my dogmatic non-acceptance of this can't be done. I'll argue with my own self as to whether it can be done or not, because I'll out-stubborn my desire not to do it. But I know that in me. I've known it for a long time. And when it comes to a point where I'm questioning as whether I can commit to the fiery pace that is required for the vision, I always know, not secretly, but I always know that in my back pocket is this little trick that I've learned over the years of observing myself. And it is, I am freakishly stubborn. And so it's for all of us throughout our young lives to start looking for these personal traits, these inherent qualities that perhaps only we own in that grid square. Now, I'm not saying that I'm that unique, that I have secret sauce or anything like that. What I am saying is I've taken the time in my life to figure out what tools I've got. And then I've refined them to a degree where I can pull a tool out of my back pocket and look someone in the eye and think, it ain't going to work out the way you think. It's going to work out the way I know, because I've just seen this pattern too many times.
We've you and I had a conversation about this on Wednesday, and
Right.
it happens all the time. I love the fact I can personally attest to your stubbornness on a couple of occasions. It's awesome. Brian, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that to aspire to be a giant, you have to have some stubbornness behind you, because you have to have that ability, to grit, to not quit. That peace of mind where I can do this, even though it seems insurmountable. I can overcome and achieve my goals. And for me, when I struggle, I try to designed for myself very small incremental wins toward my goal, things that I know I can accomplish, and I do that, and that can get me rolling on something where I might not be able to accomplish, but those little wins can give me that motivation to get me over that little bit of doubt that I might have in my head.
You know, it's funny because we got a comment here on the Instagram side. Blackwater Technical Diving jumped in and he said it's about finding what works for you. And this is interesting too, because I think it's accurate. It's always about finding what works for you, finding those little wins for you, being absolutely stubborn for Sean. You know, I've always been able to learn really quickly. So when I have to do something new, that's the same concept, is just I start learning smaller processes. How do I break this down into smaller things so that I can pick it up that much faster? And but I think there's something to add into this, in that fact that it has to be relentless, because a lot of people out there, this is where mediocrity kicks in, is like, yep, this works, and then not doing anything with it from there, right? Learning something new or trying to get your win in, or something is really hard and you're like, okay, well, I'm just not going to quit. But there's a piece beyond that where it has to continue on the next day as well, and it has to continue on that next day as well, and then but I think we can settle pretty easily if we let ourselves settle for stuff. And I find, I'm wondering what is the piece for you to not settle for adequate, Sean?
Well, I think one really easy way for anyone who's listening to this now or later is drop your label, man. Oh, you're a fast learner? Cool. When's the last time you fast learned? 4 years ago? You ain't a fast learner, because you ain't fast learning. You've labeled yourself as such. And the same would be for me. If I labeled myself at a young age as, oh, I'm freaking stubborn, but then an adult asks me 12 years later, when's the last time you were freaking stubborn? It was about 4 years ago. I'm not stubborn. I've just labeled myself as such. It's that self-belief that you are something, and then now you're that thing forever. You were stubborn once in grade 6. Now you're the stubborn guy forever, but never demonstrate stubbornness. I don't buy into it. Labeling yourself as something, but not pressure testing that label on the regular, is where it all goes wrong. And so, to your point, these small, consistent steps that demonstrate to yourself that what you're telling yourself is true. Oh, I'm fast. I better be running fast today to demonstrate to myself that I'm freaking fast. So if you ran a fast mile in high school on the track, and then 12 years later, you still think you're that kid on the track, but you've never seen running shoes in 5 years, are you still fast? Maybe in your mind, but that all comes to a crashing halt 5 years later when you tie on some new shoes and go out there and try to relive those glory days of I'm fast. And you pretty rapidly realize that about halfway down the track, you trip on your own shoelaces because you're out of breath, and you pack it all in. You quit. You've now got a 1 day old pair of running shoes for another 4 years. You then begin to tell yourself, well, that was an off day. I'm still fast. Maybe 4 years later, you'll throw on those 1 day old shoes and pressure test and really realize how you're not fast. And so to wrap it all up, I would say that small, consistent efforts can demonstrate to you that you are you as labeled by you. The devastating hit comes when you tell yourself the lie, let the lie go on too long without a pressure test, and when you realize that you're not actually that dude, and you get slapped upside the head by the reality of the moment, it breaks your spirit so much that you pack it all in. No one that I've ever met that is legit, or no one that I've ever worked with as a coach or whatever the case is, who is legit, ever is broken by the day if every day they're living that day. You got to be what you say every day. And when the hard times come, and they always do, you can accept the moment because you know that you're going to do what you've always done rather than guess and then realize that you didn't have the parts. It is soul crushing at times. I've seen it too many times to count. The best way to mitigate it, stay in the game every day. Prove to yourself that you are who you are rather than telling everyone else a lie about something that you weren't until maybe that imagined story.
I love that. I love it. Brian, what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's tough to follow. It's spot on, right? Giants relentlessly pursue excellence. Everything that they do, they make it worth it. And if you wake up in the morning and you think, God, what am I doing? Am I just sustaining until retirement? Am I just waiting to collect that pension check or get my 401k? Well, you're doing it wrong. You need to step up your game. You need to challenge yourself every day. Make sure that every action leads to something that's worthwhile. And that's how to be a giant. All the greats, all in the history of the world, they have that commonality of that relentless pursuit of excellence. And all of us can do it. We just have to step up, put in the work, and make it happen.
And I think as well, to both your guys' points, is that it's the little things. It's not. I think there's a lot of times I think of conversations I've had with other people who really believe that it's about the large when it hits the fan, I'll be ready. Or when this thing happens, then I'll be good. Or if I can get that, then this. But what I've come to understand, at least from my experience, is the fact that it's in the little small decisions that we make every day, right? And this sounds innocuous, but back to the concept of basic training, like when you're polishing your boots, if you do it correctly, if you do it in the process that you're taught, here's the outcome. This is what'll happen. You'll have shiny boots at the end of the day. You do a ton of push-ups. Well, guess what? You're going to get good at push-ups, or you're going to get good at learning the lesson the first time, right? And it's in the little decisions, in the little piece by piece things. I'm going to take the garbage out because it's full, rather than like that's just being a good human being. Yes, but there's lots of people that will walk past that garbage and be like, "Yeah, I'll get it later," or somebody else will get it, and it won't even be a thought in their mind, but it's those little things that turn into the larger things. I'm going to take out the garbage. I'm going to polish my boots. I'm going to go train when I don't want to. I'm going to go help somebody because they need my help. I'm going to go serve my community in my free time by going on a podcast with some crazy Canadians, right? Like these little things have the ripple effects into the larger scale rather than the massive events that people think of. And yeah, I'm loving this conversation. Sean, you got any other thoughts?
I do. So you mentioned garbage, all these little things that we have to do in life. The garbage won't take itself out. You have to take the garbage out. And there's a massive metaphor in there that we could play with for about a half an hour, but I'm just going to bypass that and go directly to, so the garbage has to be taken out. Now what? It sucks taking garbage out every week. It's a bummer, man. Like, it's a drag. It's not exciting, that's for sure, unless you gamify it. And that's one of my little secrets in life that I've applied to my own life. Well, it's not a secret, but it's one of the things that I've done is gamify life. And that doesn't mean turn it into a joke. It means applying game theory, chaos theory, boundary structures, rules, processes. You play Monopoly, you know that you just don't bang your little device all over the Monopoly board chaotically without rules. There are understood ways, there are processes in any game that we all understand. And so it's for us to gamify the garbage day, which I've been doing for maybe almost 2 years now. In Roslyn, here I am in my friend's location in Cardston. But when I'm back in Roslyn, Thursday is garbage day. And so every Thursday, I I do whatever I do, take out the garbage, and then on the way back to the garage, I'll have set up my phone on video, and I'll walk towards the camera and I'll do something ridiculous, like a spinning back kick, or I'll pull out knives, or I'll cut a banana in the air, or I'll whatever, some kind of nonsense. Seemingly to the internet, it's just me clowning around, or perhaps others would deem it as he's flaring out, or he's trying to impress, or he's trying to distract, whatever. However someone interprets it, that's on them. But how I interpret it is this. I've been gamifying my life so long that I look for games within the games within the game. And so I take out the garbage, I turn it into a game. The game is I'm going to have a bit of fun with it, which makes it easier to do. But while I'm having a little bit of fun, at whatever layer I decide to plant seeds of inspiration or thought or distraction, whatever I have in my mind that I want to play with as a thought construct, to not manipulate people who see it, but to influence them in a positive way, that's my game within a game. And so then what's the game within the game within the game? Well, I've got those as well, because I've been playing it for decades. It's not that I've been playing my video garbage day game for decades, but my understanding of Sean's game in life is what brings me joy and satisfaction and intrigue to some degree. Like, though I wasn't in Roslyn yesterday, I actually kind of did a garbage day move, you know? Like, there was no garbage to take out, but I was like, dang, it's Thursday. I didn't get to do something redonkulous to embarrass myself on the internet. And so I just threw up a almost no consideration video, but I was amusing myself with certain things, and like, I had fun yesterday. But that was only because I turned it into a fun game rather than a drag, man. And so, yeah, taking out garbage sucks. But there's a whole different way to flip it on its head and make it freaking awesome.
And every so often fight bears.
That's right.
That's the other part. Brian, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little younger than Sean at 45, so I'm still figuring out. It's not necessarily. I try to make it fun, but I get fun in those accomplishments that I meet. I guess it is a game because I set challenges and I meet those challenges. I wouldn't say that I have as fun with it as Sean does, but I probably need to. So I probably need to turn it into something like that. I think that's good life advice.
I agree, and not only that, but also, life can be a drag if you let it be, obviously. But this is part of a conversation we were having the other day. Was, when you stick yourself into one particular pathway at any point in time, right? If you get stuck on, well, okay, Thursdays are going to be garbage days, and I'm going to do a friggin' spinning back kick every Thursday, then that game loses its appeal because it becomes rote, becomes the same, and there's nothing fun in it. But life should be fun. I mean, like, really, we can have fun with a lot of different things. And I remember some of the things, especially with the military, they suck. Like, they really, really suck. But somehow we come out of it having fun. Some of my best memories come from the absolute worst situations you can imagine, but they were fun. We somehow created fun out of it. And I'm wondering how much we look at the giants in our past, how much we look at our kids coming up and becoming new giants to then shoulder the next generation, etc. How much that plays into how much we enjoy the time. Because if all we're doing is trying to make things better without actually having any fun, then it doesn't look enjoyable, right, for the younger generation. And if I see somebody that I want to be like, but they're not having any fun either, that doesn't seem all that appealing at that point, right? And so I'm going to come right back to you, Brian. What do you think about having fun?
Yeah, so I last summer, my Coast Guard unit, we packed up and we all went to Honolulu for a month, which
Rough,
I
man.
loved. I had so much fun, just a great time. But there were a lot of junior guys that were that didn't have fun. I'm like, how do you not have fun in Hawaii? We're gonna put you on a boat in the most beautiful place and put you up in a hotel. Like, you don't even have to stay in a tent because it's the Coast Guard. And people were complaining. You know, they were saying, "Oh, we have to eat gas station food. This is ridiculous." I'm like, well, you get per diem. You can eat wherever you want. But I was taken aback. I was shocked because I had a blast. And the unit this year, we're going to Alaska, and I am going to have an absolute blast. And I'm curious to see what sort of complaints that are going to come my way after it's done. But I front loaded it this time. I'm like, look, you know, these are rare opportunities that you have to come together with this brotherhood, and it's they don't last long. And when they're gone, they're gone. And so you need to take those opportunities to realize that this is fun, and this might be the most fun that you'll ever have, and get paid for it. So I think that, yeah, finding fun in what you do is key to happiness. It's key to success, and sometimes life is tough, and sometimes it's tough to find those fun moments. And so and I think you just need to understand things for what they are, and try to extract that fun out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Sean, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking of an example back in my younger military career, and it is filling sandbags. You know, everyone gets in an extended line, someone's shoveling, it gets passed down the line, it gets stacked up on the wall, and, you know, you're off to the races. And, you know, maybe that's going to take a couple hours, maybe a couple of days. It doesn't really matter, but it's going to take time. And somewhere in that time, it's the suck. It's drudgery, or it's hard, or it's dirty, or it's sweaty, or you'd rather be like fishing in Hawaii, or whatever the case is. And so, you know, those moments, those difficult moments, there's a really important aspect here that you can play two ways. And I've played it both ways. And I've played it both ways intentionally so that I can learn what's appropriate as a way in a particular moment, given the circumstances and the vibe of the scenario. And so I can think of a moment where I was filling a sandbag and I looked at the guy next to me. I said, "It's on like Donkey Kong. Let's freaking go, boys." And I started speed shoveling to the degree where the lineup is like, now we're playing a game. How fast can we all go? How fast can we hand that sandbag down the line? Can you now do it over your head real fast? Like, I'd set all sorts of ridiculous conditions within the game that I wanted to play in order to turn it into a moment other than the suck. And so what I learned in these opportunities to better play a better game is sometimes you do it wrong and sometimes you do it right. And that's what you have to do. You have to make mistakes and you have to learn to do it better. And the only way you can do that is through play. You can't have one play in your playbook. You've got to have multiple. You've got to design new plays. These are novel thoughts that I've had throughout my life at certain circumstances when I know nobody on the planet has designed a challenge quite like the one I'm doing. And if it means I've got to throw an eye patch on, have a parrot on my shoulder, stand on one leg, throw a pine cone up in the air, and cut just the top half off of the pine cone, if I manage to do that, the next iteration is I'm going to do it with 2 parrots because I know no one in the world has done that. That's how I think. And so there's a time and place for that. The times when it isn't the right time to do it, you'll learn pretty quickly that it wasn't the right time, because you'll start getting stink eye, you'll start getting attitude, you'll start getting pushback. You might start getting pushback from higher command that, hey, this isn't a time to clown around. Well, we're getting the job done. Well, we don't like the vibe. What kind of vibe are you looking for? Well, we're looking for a serious vibe. What kind of serious vibe would you like? Does the serious vibe increase the velocity of us stacking sandbags? The outcome should be the focus, not the are we having fun or is this the suck? The outcome is the pursuit. So if the mission has priority, how you weave your way towards that mission, as long as it's efficient and effective and safe and produces to some degree the best outcome, you have to have some lateral flexibility for yourself in these moments to some degree think outside of the box. The one play in your one playbook, that's getting you nowhere. You need to create alternatives on either side of that one play to see this one doesn't work, that one did. Okay, now I've got two to play with. So through iterations, you'll start building up a playbook or a toolbox that when you step into a moment, you can almost amuse yourself with which direction you want to take it towards the successful outcome of the mission state. But that doesn't mean it's a clown show. You've got to do some clown show to realize that clown shows don't work. You got to dial it back from the clown show to a case where I'm kind of riding the edge of clownishness and I'm getting pushback, but I've just noticed something interesting. Everyone wants to do it again tomorrow. So now I have to find the right balance between not too much clown show, but enough clown show that these iterations are a desired outcome. We want more sandbag days because we had a blast. Now, I know that's an extreme example, but that's the example for life. All the things that we want to do that are appealing, go fishing in Hawaii, well, you can do it right, like Brian is, and that is his per diem, he's going to choose wisely. Or you can do it wrong and use your per diem towards the gas station food. But here's another way to look at it. Oh, terrible that you had to eat gas station food. How about this? You're not eating for the next 3 days. That's it. There's no per diem and there's no eating. Let me know how day 4 food tastes like from the gas station. Pretty sure it'll feel like caviar. And so contextuality is important. I think what causes a lot of complaining, in fact, I'd go so far as to say it's whining, is this sense of entitlement that every day has to be caviar. How about there is no caviar for a while? And then when you get to taste caviar, you truly appreciate it. And so gas station food, man, there's times I would have stabbed myself in the leg to have a Twinkie. In fact, in the past, I recall skulking out of a night observation post to dive into a McDonald's garbage can to dig out 2 fillet of fish that were rank and skulk back into my observation post to share a probably food poisoning moment with my sniper partner. And I can't even categorize how much we enjoyed that disgusting fillet of fish. But if all I was doing was floating around just off the coast of Hawaii, eating tuna every day, barbecuing in the sunshine with my aviator sunglasses and my hat on backwards, I would think that life is tuna every day. Well, it ain't. And a good way to appreciate tuna every day is to not have tuna for a year. Life is context. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it totally is. And it's interesting, especially I was thinking about the weather, how, it's springtime now, at least up here, Brian. Up north, it's finally spring. We don't have snow on the ground anymore. We're it's starting to warm up. I was walking around in a t-shirt today outside. I was just like, this is friggin' awesome. And throughout my time now, I experienced extreme heat in Afghanistan. I've experienced extreme cold out on exercise, and it reminded me of a particular time where I think it was minus 53 Celsius. So it was friggin' cold. And we had to create a March of the Penguins style circle where we were just slowly rotating within ourselves to keep warm because we had no tent. But those particular times there now make me look back at like, oh, it's minus 30. Cool, man. I got no issues. I remember what it was like back then. And I love the fact that you brought up contextuality because it is crucial, which is one of the reasons we have the show itself, is that so we can discuss these things, we can create some context within our lives and kind of develop a better understanding through watching, through interacting, through having conversations, all this stuff. So it's fantastic. Now, I know, Sean.
I do, but super
Okay.
quick, because it does feed into what you just said, Chance, and that is this idea that, wintertime, it's the suck when it's really cold. And so I can think of a time when I was in minus 70 up in the Arctic doing a thing, and like I was gamifying that. Listen, I had 4 face masks on. It wasn't cool. I mean, it wasn't bueno. But in minus 70, I'm looking for a game. And as crude as this may sound, and my apologies, but one of my games was to see how fast it took for my urine to freeze in midair. Like, how fast will it be frozen by the time it hit the ground? Yeah, it can be. And so, like, if I'm not going to get into the details, but the fact remains that irrespective of how redonkulous the situation is, there is a way to gain context as to, am I miserable, or can I move out of misery? This sense of victimhood. It's so cold. Yeah, it's freaking cold, man. You know what'll warm you up? Start pounding out burpees. Oh, you don't like burpees? Now you like cold? Which one's it going to be? Find your balance. Somewhere in the middle. Maybe just 100 burpees for the day. You like that? Instead of 1,000? Thought so. Want a bit of caviar rather than all the caviar? You know what I'm saying? It is wants and needs, restrictive natures, and lessons learned, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we do have a hard timing. I know you got to run, Sean, so we can get some final thoughts on the shoulders of giants, on parenting, on context, on anything that we've talked about so far. Brian, what do you got?
Yeah, well, to be a giant, you have to go face that adversity, right? You have to know what it is to struggle, and if you're not seeking that out, you're not going to be a giant, because you're not going to have anything to overcome, and you're not going to have people to follow you on the back end of that to take your place and to be a giant after you. And so make that effort every single day to be that giant, to be that example for the generation coming up.
I love it. Sean, final thoughts?
Yep, I would say that if you're currently a young person looking to vision your outcome in the future as to what it means to be a giant, don't limit yourself to Hollywood. Limit yourself to real heroes that are around you on a regular basis. A Leo, as an example, in Brian's case, is a perfect example of a hero if it's done right. And that is the case. All heroes aren't always right all the time. You can move towards giant stature, but lose your way and backslide to miniature stature. No one will want to stand on your shoulders if you start drinking your own Kool-Aid and believing you're on your way to gianthood. You got to stay in the game, man. The game of consistency, the game of striving, the game of excellence. These are the things that move you to a bigger, more important foundation for the others that are going to stand on that foundation. I don't want to stand on any small man's shoulders. I want to stand on a stable foundation that makes me feel like I owe that man my efforts to create a bigger, stronger foundation than the one I stood on.
Yeah. I just had this vision in the fact of, if I need to stand on somebody's shoulders, that means I need to climb to get there. And a climb is not easy. It's going to be hard, and it's supposed to be hard. So start climbing. If that's where you want to sit, climb, and then somebody will climb your back. Make sure you got a static, stable structure, which is, I love that. Other than that, I got nothing else. Really appreciate all the comments on both sides of this. I didn't get to them all just I dove into the conversation a little bit too deeply, I think, today. So I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time as we all continue to learn, build, and grow. Chimo.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see you all next time.